first heard the announcement of Fallout 4 at E3, the smile on my face stretched from ear to ear as Todd Howard continuously blew away the crowd, announcing new game mechanics, art pieces, and long-rumored story settings. From the beginning, Fallout 4 was destined with Todd's famous catchphrase, "It just works." But that's exactly it. It only just works. Fallout 4 is a technical mess across all systems, with consistent frame drops, textures constantly failing to load in, and countless bugs, both quirky and some game-breaking. The leading cause of these problems seem to come from the game's data graphics engine, a modified version of the creation engine used in Skyrim, which was also plagued with similar problems at launch. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some fantastic lighting effects and volumetric particle systems in place that really do add a nice flair, but viewing objects up close reveals flat, smudgy textures, and the character models still have that really weird human potato vibe going on. The biggest drawback is when entering large open areas or exploring dense city streets, as frame rates will drop to a crawl on consoles or just downright stop entirely. The most stable build seems to be on the PC. However, most gamers may not have the money to spend in order to meet the recommended specs. Fans of Bethesda games, including myself, have come to expect these issues over the years. However, that still doesn't make it right for a AAA title in 2015 to release in such a poor state. We should be holding these companies to a higher pedigree, especially if that game has been in development for over 5 years. Now that we've gotten through all the technical problems, let's actually talk about the gameplay. At the time of this review, I put in just under 44 hours and I'm only scratching the surface in terms of content. Total map size, while larger than Fallout 3, pales in comparison to Skyrim, but what it lacks in size, it makes up for in discovery. From the moment players first leave the vault, it's nearly impossible to travel in one direction more than 30 seconds without tripping over a raider camp or a broken down building, each with its own backstory or subtle side quest waiting to be explored. Speaking of quests, variety differs nicely, but many begin to fall into the go fetch category and get old rather quickly. The main story is pretty cliche and attempts to add twists that can be seen from a mile away, and most side character development is slow and just blatantly uninteresting. But that's not to say that the game's boring. Actually, it's quite the opposite. Whether you plan on playing for 15 minutes or a few hours, there's always new sights to be seen or quests waiting to be discovered. Early on, players are given access to their very own settlement, which can be upgraded using various materials gathered from junk all over the wasteland. Let's say you want to build some metal walls to keep the raiders out. Go scrap some old cars. Or how about adding a jetpack to your power armor? Better start collecting aluminum cans. Every single weapon and armor piece that you pick up can be modified and reworked to fit your specific demands. Once a settlement is founded and new NPCs begin to move in, you can task them with various jobs and even assign them on trade routes to your other settlements. The new customization mechanics add a nice flair to the game by giving a player a sense of involvement in shaping the world. But they're far from perfect. Building is rather shallow and gets old pretty quick. Also, settlers will sometimes default away from their jobs and just stand around doing nothing. When I first heard about the building mechanics, I was expecting something along the lines of Fallout Shelter, but instead what I got was a watered-down chessboard with half the pieces missing. Bethesda has the potential to take this idea to a whole new level, and I really would love to see the idea expanded upon in future DLC or maybe even some player-made mods. In the end, Fallout 4 feels like a step sideways rather than a step forward. The gameplay isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination and does offer hours of quality entertainment, but it just feels like Bethesda began checking off one box at a time until they had the Fallout experience and then stopped, instead of pushing for new and innovative ways to bring the series forward and set new standards. Whether you're a returning fan or just looking for an RPG to sink countless hours into, I recommend Fallout 4, giving it a 7 out of 10.